Welcome to this little episode of Cook's Tour, and we are cooking aboard our sailboat kitchen, our galley kitchen on Salty Lass, and today's little recipe is bangers and mash. Now, you may have heard of bangers and mash, it's basically sausages and potatoes, but since we're in Bangor, Northern Ireland, Bangor, we thought we would do bangers and mash, which is bangers and mash done in Bangor. So, the ingredients for this are quite simple. We have potatoes. We have gluten-free sausages because everything we cook on Salty Lass is gluten-free. We've got some onions, a gluten-free stock cube, a bit of garlic and a bit of tomato, and some cornflour and a bit of sugar. So this is what we're going to be cooking today, and if we can cook this in our little small galley kitchen on our yacht, think what you can do in a full-size kitchen in a flat or in a house or wherever you live. Job number one is to get the sausages cooking. We will be doing this probably slightly differently from what most people would do. Because this is a thermal cooker, we let it cook for hours at a time, but it does require liquid. So we're going to brown these sausages first in some chopped onions with a bit of garlic and some herbs, and it will form a nice onion gravy, which will go, but we just want to brown these first. And so we're putting it in here, and that's job number one. So we start by cutting the onions. I'm just chopping these very, very roughly. And I don't have a Kenwood blender or whatever they are, because we don't have a lot of electric aboard. Everything on the boat is battery powered by big giant batteries. So this sort of thing, the chopping is done by hand. And I now have chopped onions. So I've got my chopped onions, I've got my sausages. We're probably going to be greedy and use the lot because we're greedy that way. So what I'm going to do is get these into the cooker and get them moving, and then we'll do the potatoes. So the first thing we do in our boat kitchen is we find the cooker, which is under here, and then we have to turn all the gas on, and we have a switch for that, and then we have to turn the cooker on, and we have a switch for that too. So we'll start with some cooking oil. You'll notice I measure my quantities very precisely. Not. So I'm just going to brown my sausages first because they take longer to cook than my onions. Okay, so we've got the sausages sizzling away. They're browning nicely in there. And when they're browned, I will add the onions, a little bit of garlic and tomato, and the stock cube, and some water just to keep it all going over. So we're letting that get on with it for a few minutes. I have got my other cooking pot, and as you can see, I've filled it with potatoes, and so it should all fit when I chop them up. With this particular kind of cooking pot, it works well if I chop the potatoes into smaller pieces and put them in the boiling water. They just cook through. So I might as well do that while I'm waiting on this. I'll just give this a quick check. They're coming along rather nicely in there, so I will get the potatoes done. It'll only take a few minutes because this is not exactly particularly scientific or exact in any way whatsoever. I just cut them into nice big chunks like that. Right, well, the sausages are coming on nicely, so I think it's time to add the onions, and I will also add about a teaspoon of garlic. Very exact those measurements, definitely. Do you know what? I find that you watch cooking programs and it's 335 grams of this, 26 grams of that, an ounce and a half of this, 2.2 cups of this. It generally doesn't matter that much. If you get it about the right quantity, it comes out tasting about right. And you know what? I love the variation. I love the fact that every dish is a little different from the one I had before. It's just me. If you don't like it that way, don't do it that way. Easy peasy. About a tablespoon of tomato. And yes, as you say, the tomato is quite bitter, so just a little bit of sugar just to counteract it. And the other thing I'm just going to add is my gluten-free stock cube. This is a vegetable stock cube. We could get beef ones, we could get pork ones, we can get chicken ones, and of course we can get vegetable ones. But space on board is at a premium because our entire boat's about the size of a standard living room. So we just have vegetable for everything. It's much simpler that way. So I'll get these now, I'll scrape them in there, give them a little stir, a little bit of hot water just to get it ticking over and stir it in, and we'll see how we go. So I've added enough boiling water here just to cover the sausages because our thermal cooker works best when it has some liquid in it to hold the heat in. So that's what I've done with this, and it's now time to get the potatoes underway. That's bubbling away merrily. So we just wait for this to start boiling, and then when it does, the whole thing goes into our thermal cooker and it can be left alone for a couple of hours. One of the peculiarities of a thermal cooker is that the liquids can't evaporate, they can't get out of the thermal cooker, so you've really got to get the thicknesses of the sauces right when you put them in. You can't really reduce a sauce down in a thermal cooker. Now, if you're not using a thermal cooker, if you're using an ordinary pot on an ordinary stove, you can just boil it until the sauce thickens and reduces and the rest of it, but we can't. So what we generally do is we get some corn flour and we make a bit of a mix and we put it in just to thicken the sauce so everything comes out looking just about the right consistency. So I'll do that now. And I simply just stir my sauce, pouring this in dribs and drabs, until I get the consistency I want. So the potatoes are just beginning to simmer. Yeah. So they're almost ready to go. Right, so I've been down in the ship stores. It was a long way down to the bottom of the boat, but there you go. And I've now got some oregano, which I will use instead of thyme. So I'm just going to sprinkle about a dessert spoonful. And as you can see, my potatoes are now bubbling away. So we are now ready to put everything into Mr. D, our thermal cooker. Alright, so that goes there. These come up. Okay. And we leave them to cook in here for anywhere between about another hour to maybe as much as 4 hours. It just depends when we want to have our dinner, but it's bubbling away in here. It will continue to cook in its own heat. I don't need to use any more gas. And that's it. So see you in a couple of hours. Alright, so it's an hour or two later, and I have drained the potatoes because they are cooked through, as you can as you can see. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some butter to this. There we go. Oh, come on, get that off. And I'm just going to a little splash of milk so it's not too dry, but not too much. And then it gets stuck in with a masher. So off we go. Oh yeah. So I'm ladling out the potatoes and I'll sort them all out in a minute. I'm not very artistic at this sort of thing, so I have no pretensions of being one of these TV cooks that produce beautifully sculptured pieces of food on plates. I should probably try and improve, but my philosophy is a bit closer to whack it on and hope for the best. But
as long as it tastes delicious, we don't care.
It does have that compensating factor. So I will try and turn these mounds of lumpy potato, as it currently looks, into something that looks a little bit more refined, shall we say. I put a little dent in the middle so that the gravy sits on top. Thank you.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And there we have it. Bangers and mash.
Yeah, perfect. And now for the bit I like the best. A glass of wine, a lovely meal, and it's gonna be fantastic.
And oh yes, the other thing I need to do is just pop a few sprigs of thyme.
Just say it again. No, go on.
I'm really not happy with that thyme, you know. Oh, it just looks a bit grey.
It does look a bit grey, but I'm afraid so beggars can't be choosers at the moment, Deley.
Given the current ongoing crisis in the media, you know what I mean. I'm really not happy with that thyme. Tell you what we're going to do then. I normally would put thyme in, but I'm just going to put dried mixed herbs in instead, or maybe dried oregano instead of thyme. So not starting to go grey in colour, which I always think about. It should be a nice bright green, really. You know, it shouldn't be like that. It looks like it's got